Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to a new edition of Newsroom Live. In tonight's edition, we will tackle the situation in Gaza and several other key issues in the worlds of politics, business and sports, so stay with us. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Transport Kamel al-Wazir, Minister of Agriculture Sayyid al-Qusayr, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation Hani Swalem, and Head of the Suez Canal Authority, in addition to the Head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority, Ahmed al-Azzazi. Presidential spokesman Councillor Ahmed Fahmi said that the meeting discussed a number of issues pertinent to the government's work, including efforts to remove encroachments as well as dredging work in Egypt's lakes. This in addition to the development programs and projects which are currently being implemented to leverage the resources of these lakes, as well as the legislative frameworks for the protection of the lakes and the regulation of their management. During the meeting, President al-Sisi gave directives to the government to strengthen efforts towards upgrading all lakes across the country and boosting economic components in the developmental projects by organizing berths and fishermen's boats so as to take full advantage of the fisheries resources to create job opportunities. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry discussed with his Jordanian counterpart Ayman al-Safadi navigation security in the Red Sea, given both its importance to international trade and as it is a part of national security of both countries. The meeting in Cairo also dealt with the situation in Gaza and endeavors seeking a ceasefire and the implementation of a recent UN Security Council resolution. The resolution called on Israel to allow immediate, safe and unhindered deliveries of aid to Gaza at scale. Foreign Minister Shoukry on Monday received a phone call from his Iranian counterpart, Hossein Amir, on the latest developments in Gaza, as well as a number of issues of mutual concern. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said that the two ministers exchanged points of view on the deteriorating humanitarian and security conditions in the war-torn Gaza Strip and international action to alleviate the Palestinians' suffering. Shoukry, in the meantime, briefed Iran's top diplomat on the outcome of contacts Egypt held with regional and international partners to try and reach a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and ensure sustainable access of humanitarian aid into the Palestinian enclave. Palestinian refugee camps continue to be bombarded on Tuesday. More than 20,600 Palestinians, two-thirds of them women and children, have been killed by the Israeli occupation's aggression since the war on Gaza started, according to the health ministry in Gaza. The story.
In a new episode of War Crimes, Israeli occupation forces bombarded Palestinian refugee camps in central Gaza and issued orders telling residents to evacuate the area Tuesday, signs that the military plans to extend its ground offensive into a third section of the besieged territory. The opening of a potential new battle zone threatens to bring a new wave of destruction and displacement in a war that Israel has said will last for months as it vows to crush the Palestinian resistance. Israeli occupation forces have been engaged in heavy urban fighting in northern Gaza and in the southern city of Khan Yunis, driving Palestinians into ever smaller parts of the territory in search of refuge. Despite international pressure for a ceasefire and U.S. calls for reduction in civilian casualties, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu warned the fight isn't close to finished. Israel's aggression has been one of the most devastating genocide campaigns in recent history, More than 20,900 Palestinians, two-thirds of them women and children, have been killed, according to the health ministry in Gaza. Meanwhile, there were new signs of the Israel-Hamas war, inflaming tensions around the region. An Israeli airstrike in Syria killed an Iranian general, bringing vows of revenge from Iran. U.S. warplanes hit Iranian-backed militias in Iraq that had carried out a drone strike that wounded American soldiers there. Residents of central Gaza Tuesday described a night of shelling and airstrikes shaking a Nusayrat camp. The camps were built uptown, housing Palestinians driven from their homes in what is now Israel during the 1948 war, and their descendants, and now are also crowded with people who fled the north.
And to discuss the situation in Gaza, we are joined now over the phone by Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst. A very good evening to you, Dr. Ghaffar. Sir, how do you see this ending? The suffering of the Palestinian civilians, women and children in Gaza, the lack of action by the international community. How do you see this ending? Dr. Ghaffar? Ghaffar. Okay, now we have with us over the phone Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst. Dr. Ghaffar, how do you see the Israeli war on Gaza ending?
Unfortunately, most unfortunately, I cannot see any forthcoming ending soon. Okay. Unfortunately, I mean, it has been going on. What we hear from the Israeli Prime Minister, that he is moving into the third phase of the war, which we do not understand what was the first and second phase, but anyway, he is moving into the third phase. It does not seem to end soon, although he is completely pressurized from outside and from the inside, but apparently he is simply relying on the American backing and just doing what he thinks is what he should do, although we see it completely wrong. But anyway, his political, in my opinion, again, his political future is on the line. So he is just gambling for the sake of staying where he is as the Prime Minister of Israel. That is the situation, pathetic situation, sad situation that does not seem to reach an end soon. So we look, we hope and pray that he comes to his senses and things gets better for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, of course.
Right. At the same time, the resistance factions, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, are dealing a very big blow to the Israeli occupation army inside of Gaza, you know, killing them in scores and injuring them in scores. So the fight, the losses, the toll of the losses on the Israeli side, despite the big gap, of course, in in power between a regular army like that of Israel and just a group of fighters like those in Qassam brigades or Sarai al-Quds. Do you see this? Do you see that Israel has achieved any of its declared goals in Gaza, which is totally eradicate Hamas, the return of the hostages or the kidnapped, as they call them, and making the situation, making the on-ground situation after the 7th of October different from that of before the 7th of October?
Let's take it one step at a time. First of all, there is no way a regular army can fight against freedom fighters, individual like Hamas. They cannot win, especially that street fights. They don't need tanks, don't need armored vehicles, and don't need airplanes. And that is why, in my opinion, Israel is not achieving any success. On the contrary, they are losing personnel, they are losing armaments, and they are losing grounds as far as the international community is concerned. So this is number one. Number two, again, in my opinion, this war, if it continues the way it is, can go on practically forever. Hamas will never give up. They are fighting for their freedom, and they have all the incentives they need, versus an army that is fighting that does not understand what it is fighting for. And this is what the soldiers and the officers of the Israeli army are often saying everywhere. So once again, this is not, of course, the atrocities and the genocide that is being practiced on the ground is completely against, you name it, against humanity, against human rights, against anything to do with ethics or morals. So, but again, apparently they don't care, and they are continuing what they are doing, thinking that this will bring them to a success, which it will never.
Right, right, Dr. Ghaffar. Another question here is, so what after Gaza? Because this will come to an end one day. Now Israel is opening war fronts on all sides in the West, in the occupied West Bank, with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, with Iran's proxies in the region, including Houthis. I mean, where is this going? Because Israel could be just at war for for decades to come if this is the mentality. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. But the point is, as you rightly said, of course, the dream of Israel is to invade Gaza and find a place for the Palestinians to live, and probably they will do the same in the West Bank, which they will never happen. It will never happen, of course. Of course, they are being now in confrontation with the south of Lebanon and the Houthis from down south. They are still in another kind of war against them. Point is, in my opinion, it cannot go forever, because the escalation against the Israeli government and against Mr. Netanyahu himself is going higher and higher and higher and bigger by the day. So if he can resist today, he cannot resist tomorrow. So
right, Dr. Ghaffar, but we've heard from Netanyahu's political opponents inside of Israel that they too now reject the vision of a two-state solution. So that's my next and final question. The United States says that the only way forward is at the very end a two-state solution, but it seems that the hawkish the so-called hawkish wing in Israel is winning now, because even Naftali Bennett, even Benny Gantz, even the opponents of Netanyahu are now saying that, you know, Oslo was a mistake and there is no future Palestinian state and so on. So how do you see this going? I mean, will the US word and the Arab aspiration for, you know, a land for peace and a two-state solution win in the end? Or can Israel just ignore everybody, including the US, and continue with its wars with everybody?
Mind you, if they think for a second, they will understand that the only way is the two-state solution. If they continue on what they are doing and practicing on the ground, hoping to have one big Israeli state, either they kick all the Palestinians out, which cannot happen. They will have to live with them. It's not to the benefit and the interest of Israel on the long run. The only way is the two-state solution. Everybody in the world understands that, and this is, again, the only way out for Israel. Or else, there is no future for Israel. Again, this is my opinion. So maybe the Israelis are a little sad for their losses, which can be understandable, but on the long run, there is no way this will come to an end without a two-state solution. It's better for the security of Israel, and it's better for the Palestinians, of course, and it's better for the whole region, the whole area, and the whole world.
Right,
and,
Dr.
Yes.
Right, Dr. Ghaffar, you are. Thank you very much for your time and your insights, Sir Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst, talking to us about the situation in occupied Palestine and regarding Gaza in specific. In the meantime, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said in Gaza, on Tuesday that Gaza is an inseparable part of the future Palestinian state. Abbas said that any political settlement must be comprehensive and inclusive of all the lands of the Palestinian state, with Jerusalem al-Quds as its capital. Abbas was speaking during a meeting with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, he presided over, discussing the continued Israeli occupation aggression on the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. During the meeting, Abbas said the national priority now is to put a permanent end to the aggression and to secure the passage of humanitarian necessities to Gaza and to stand against the resettlement conspiracy. Israel's occupation army said on Tuesday an anti-tank missile fired by Lebanese group Hezbollah wounded 9 soldiers as they rescued a civilian who was injured in another cross-border strike. One of the soldiers was in serious condition after the group was hit when rescuing the civilian injured by an anti-tank missile fired from Lebanon. That missile had hit a Greek Orthodox church in the village of Ikrit. The hilltop church is located in Ikrit, an abandoned Palestinian Christian village whose people were forced to leave during the 1948 war, or Nakba. The frontier between Lebanon and Israel has seen escalating exchanges of fire, mainly between Israel and Hezbollah, since Israel's aggression on Gaza began on October the 7th, raising fears of a border conflict and of a spill of a wider all-out conflict. Still in the region, Russian airstrikes on the last major armed opposition stronghold in Syria killed 5 civilians from the same family, including 3 children. Members of the White Helmets, which operates in rebel-held areas of northern Syria, pulled the victims from under the rubble of their house. The victims were from the same family of 6. On Tuesday, Syrian state news agency Sana reported that the army had downed and destroyed 8 terrorist drones in Idlib and Halab provinces Citing the defense ministry in Damascus, the agency said forces responded to attempts to attack villages, towns, and military points. Away from the region now, Ukraine, invaded by Russia nearly 2 years ago, is celebrating Christmas for the first time on December 25th, jettisoning the traditional Orthodox date of January 7th, which is feted in Russia as a snub to Moscow. The date change moving away from the Julian calendar favored by the Orthodox Church as part of moves since the invasion to remove traces of the Russian and Soviet empires. The details.
Christmas carried more than spiritual weight for many Ukrainians this year as the country newly observed it as a public holiday on December 25th rather than the later date followed in Russia. Change enacted in legislation signed by President Volodymyr Zelensky in July reflects both Ukrainians' dismay with the 22-month-old Russian invasion and their assertion of a national identity. Ukraine is predominantly Orthodox Christian, but the faith is divided between two churches, one of which had long affiliation with the Russian Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which didn't recognize the authority of the Russian Church and had been regarded, was granted full recognition in 2019 by the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, Orthodoxy's top authority. Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which was a branch of the Russian Church, announced in 2022 after the start of the Russia-Ukraine war that it was breaking ties with Moscow and considering itself autonomous. However, its parishes continue to follow the same liturgical calendar as the Russian Church and will observe Christmas on January 7th. Many Ukrainians embrace the move to celebrate Christmas on the 25th of December with enthusiasm. In a village, thousands of worshippers, many in traditional garb, including the embroidered shirts, crowded the streets and streamed to settlement's noted elaborate wooden church. In the mountains of Carpathian, which is about 800 kilometers west from the front line, the war was on the minds of the worshippers. The local priest, who said 16 people from the village of only 1,500 residents had died in the fighting, said that people didn't just come to observe the celebration, but came to pray.
You're still watching Nile TV's Newsroom Live. The Turkish Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee has given its consent to Sweden's bid to join NATO on Tuesday, drawing the previously non-aligned Nordic country closer to membership in the Western Military Alliance. Sweden's accession protocol will now need to be approved in the General Assembly for the last stage of the legislative process in Turkey. No date has been set. Turkey, a NATO member, has delayed ratifying Sweden's application for more than a year, accusing the country of being too lenient towards groups that Ankara regards as threats to its security, including Kurdish militants and members of a network that Ankara blames for a failed coup in 2016. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan earlier this month linked ratification of Sweden's NATO membership to the United States Congress's approval of a Turkish request to purchase 14 new F-16 fighter jets and kits to modernize Turkey's existing fleet. Erdogan also called on Canada and other NATO allies to lift arms embargoes imposed on Turkey, to lift arms embargoes imposed on Turkey. And Iran has reversed a slowdown in the rate at which it is enriching uranium to up to 60% purity, close to weapons grade, returning to a rate of around 9 kilograms a month from the reduced rate of 3, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. The story.
The UN nuclear watchdog said on Tuesday that Iran has reversed a months-long slowdown in the rate at which it is enriching uranium to up to 60% purity, close to weapons grade. Many diplomats believed the slowdown, which had begun by June, was the result of secret talks between the United States and Iran that led to the release of US citizens held in Iran earlier this year. Iran already has enough uranium enriched to up to 60%, if enriched further, to make 3 nuclear bombs, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency's theoretical definition, and more at lower enrichment levels. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. Iran has increased its production of highly enriched uranium, reversing a previous output reduction from mid-2023. And Iran is enriching to up to 60%, close to the roughly 90% that is weapons grade, at its pilot fuel enrichment plant, in its sprawling Natanz complex, and at its Frodo fuel enrichment plant, which is dug into a mountain. The IAEA said since the slowdown, those plants had been enriching uranium to up to 60% at a rate of about 3 kilograms a month. By the IAEA theoretical definition, around 42 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% is the amount of which making a nuclear bomb with it cannot be excluded. IAEA inspectors said first observed a change in production at Fordo on November 25th, after which Iran said the change was made on November 22nd, and that the rate of production was returning to the pre-slowdown level there. Inspectors observed an increase in production rate at Natanz on November 27th. The IAEA then verified the amount being produced at Natanz on December 19th and Fordo on December 24th.
Welcome back. The business part of Newsroom Live now. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli highlighted on Tuesday the significant role played by the communications and information technology sector in advancing sustainable development in Egypt. The Prime Minister's remarks came during his meeting with Minister of Communications and Information Technology, Amr Talat. And Minister of Finance Mohammed Ma'it said that Egypt's economy showed resilience towards global crises and their hard repercussions over the past years, starting from the coronavirus pandemic and ending with geopolitical tensions. The minister said the economy had managed to deal positively with domestic and foreign challenges. He added that the state had intensified efforts to create an appropriate atmosphere to attract local and foreign investments and encourage investors to benefit from competitive incentives offered by the government. He also said the government has adopted national programs to support green investments. And to shed light on this, we are joined over the phone by Dr. Mohammed Rushdi, the economic expert. A very good evening to you, Dr. Rushdi. And sir, talk to us please about the challenges that are facing the Egyptian economy at the moment. How resilient indeed was the Egyptian economy in past crises, like the Minister of Finance said, and the main policies that are planned by the government to face the upcoming continuing challenges?
First of all, I would like to say good evening to you and our audience. Mainly the economic part, one of the essential or crucial things that any country would like to focus on. In my humble opinion, we took a lot of initiatives concerning the economic reform one of our main pillars or one of our main objectives is to bring FDI, and bringing FDI is quite a challenge. As if you would like to bring FDI, you have to follow a lot of things. One of them, the mega projects that the presidential leadership is taking care of it and giving it priority, having a good infrastructure, in addition to investing in education and health. And one of our ambitious plan to have NHS, National Health System. As you know, and our audience, the most valuable asset to any country, which is its assets actually, and the manpower is one of the most important things. And this is positively will reflect on enhancing our GDP structure. As you know, and our audience, our GDP, or in general, the GDP structure consists of three main things: the agricultural part, the industrial part, and the third one, which is the service part. And if you would like to have a great GDP growth, you have to focus, like a lot of developed countries, on the service part. Why is the service part, which has the highest added value, and despite the fact we faced a lot of global crises, which is the first one, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, and despite this pandemic, Egypt, as far as I recall, it achieved one of the highest GDP growth globally. As far as I recall, the second rank. And after we finished this pandemic, you can see easily the Ukrainian and Russian war and its impact on the globe, the increase in oil prices, the increase on essential product prices like wheat, for example, because Russia and Ukraine, which they are offering around 30%. Despite all those challenges, Egypt and the presidential leadership has a solid vision to the economic reform, which one of its main pillar, the MPC, the investing in MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, to handle the global inflation wave and the local inflation wave. This is one of the most important things. In addition to having a lot of mega projects, infrastructure, which positively impact on a lot of things, and decreasing the unemployment rate and giving a lot of opportunities for many investors to grow.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed Rojdi, economic and banking expert, for your time, sir. And continuing with the business part of Newsroom Live, the Minister of International Cooperation, Rani Al-Mashat, asserted the deep partnership with the International Finance Corporation, the IFC, is reflected in the volume of the cooperation, which exceeds $7 billion since its work in Egypt. In a meeting with the IFC's Vice President for Africa, Sergio Pimenta, Al-Mashat said that over the past 4 years, the total investment portfolio of the IFC hit about $2.46 billion. Al-Mashat added that the government is appreciative of the joint work with the IFC, the arm of the World Bank, to finance the private sector. Egyptian stock market indices collectively declined at the close on Tuesday, affected by selling operations by local and Arab investment funds. The main benchmark EGX 30 index fell 0.96% to close at 23,995. The small and medium cap index, the EGX 70, was down by a mere 0.07% to close at 5,344 points, while the equal weighted index, the EGX 100, retreated 0.34% to reach 7,665 points. Globally, Wall Street's main indices kicked off the last week of the year on a positive note. On Tuesday's growing bets of early rate cuts by the Fed lifted investor sentiment after Christmas holidays. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 87 points or 0.24%. The S&P 500 was up 11 points or 0.25%, and the Nasdaq Composite was up 46 points or 0.31%. Oil prices in the meantime jumped over 2% to the highest in almost a month, supported by Middle East strife and investor hopes that possible rate cuts will boost global economic growth and fuel demand. In Asia, China's stocks fell 0.47%, weighed down by semiconductor shares, while gaming stocks stabilized after a slew of companies announced share buyback plans. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index remained closed. Japan's Nikkei gained 0.16% in the meantime and remains the best performing major Asian market with a 27% rise in 2023. Of Japan, so we're speaking technology. Japan has successfully put into the moon's orbit a lunar lander launched by an H-2A rocket in September. The story.
Japan's Slim space probe entered the moon's orbit in a major step towards the country's first successful lunar landing, expected next month. The smart lander for investigating the moon, Slim, is nicknamed the Moon Sniper because it is designed to land within 100 meters of a specific target on the lunar surface. If successful, the touchdown would make Japan only the fifth country to have successfully landed a probe on the moon after the United States, Russia, China, and India. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency said in a statement that Slim successfully entered the moon's orbit at 4:51 p.m. Japan local time. It said the lander's descent towards the moon is expected to start around 12 a.m. Japan time on January 20th, with its landing on the surface scheduled for 20 minutes later. The HIIA rocket lifted off in September from the southern island of Tangishima, carrying the lander after 3 postponements linked to bad weather. This month, the mission would be an unprecedentedly high-precision landing on the moon. The lander is equipped with a spherical probe that was developed with a toy company. Slightly bigger than a tennis ball, it can change its shape to move on the lunar surface. According to Zaja, compared to previous probes that landed a few or 10 plus kilometers away from targets, Slim's purported margin of error of under 100 meters suggests a level of accuracy once thought impossible thanks to the culmination of a 20-year effort by researchers. Slim's project's manager told reporters that with the advance of technology, demand is growing to pinpoint targets like craters and rocks on the lunar surface. He added that hopes are also high that Slim's exactitude will make sampling of lunar permafrost easier, bringing scientists a step closer to uncovering the mystery around water resources on the moon.
And the sports now. As Egypt's Al Ahly defeated Urawa Red Diamonds of Japan 4-2 in an entertaining Club World Cup third place playoff to secure a top 3 finish in the tournament for the 4th time, despite losing a 2-goal lead and missing a penalty. The Egyptian side, appearing in their 4th consecutive third place playoff, finished 3rd in 2006, 2020 and 2021, while Japan's Urawa came 3rd in 2007. Manchester City won the tournaments. Manchester City were too good and a bit lucky for overmatched Fluminense of Brazil in the Club World Cup final, winning 4-0 and taking a 5th title in 2023 this past Friday. City led just after 40 seconds to make it a match, mostly free of tension. An own goal in the 27th minute, and then a Phil Foden goal in the 72nd, and an Alvarez goal in the 88th completed the route. The win gave City a first Club World Cup title and Europe a 16th in 17 editions of FIFA's competition for continental champions. Tempers flared after the game, with City captain Kyle Walker confronting Fluminense players, including veteran defender Felipe Melo. Walker appeared to take offense at rough tackling that forced key midfielder Rodri off the field injured. And Egypt and Liverpool forward Mohamed Salah has said that families grieving for their loved ones in Gaza should not be forgotten, as he issued an emotional Christmas message marking only his second comments on the war in Gaza. Salah posted a black and white picture of a Christmas tree on his social media pages, saying he was approaching Christmas with a heavy heart amid the fighting in Gaza, which has been under intense bombardment by the Israeli occupation. Salah said, with the brutal war going on in the Middle East, especially the death and destruction in Gaza, this year we get to Christmas with a very heavy heart, and we share the pain of those families who are grieving the loss of their loved ones. By that, we come to the end of this edition of Nile TV Newsroom Live. I'm Mohammed Abdurrahim, and I thank you for watching.